Hey everyone, welcome to Industry Headlines. Kevin Kauffman and Fred Weaver, where we take a look back at the last 7 days worth of industry and tech headlines and talk about what's going on. So let's go ahead right from the top. Let's tell you the three biggest news stories that we're going to chat around today. The first is Keller Williams Realty filed a motion to dismiss their technology vendor suit that they have going on with TPI Cloud Hosting. And to just ruin the news on that, the judge denied that motion. So we'll come back to that in a minute. Also in the news this week, Remind found themselves in the news a couple of different times. But I thought the most interesting news story was that Zillow actually pulled Remind's Zestimate access. They took away the API that Remind had from Zillow with their Zestimate offer over some statements that were made. Kind of interesting. And then also found some more money finding its way into the technology and real estate industry, Kevin. The company Total Expert raised another $52 million. This was like Series C funding to continue to improve upon tech in the real estate space. So anyway, let's go back to the top. Let's talk a little bit about this Keller Williams story. What do you think, Kevin?
Yeah, so they try to get this thrown out, and the judge says, no, there's actually some validity here, and we're going to go ahead and see this through to trial. I mean, perhaps some of Josh Team's statements are true about just copying people's tech and not paying them for it.
So they tried to dismiss the lawsuit under what's called the state's economic loss doctrine. So apparently I think this lawsuit is in the state of Texas anyway. So it precludes claims of fraud. So like if you can get, you can get rid of the fraud stuff if you can produce that there was no economic loss to the plaintiff, right? Or the damages were just the economic loss. Anyway, long story short, I'm going to read this because I think this is cool. This is the statement from the judge. Plaintiff's complaint, that is interesting, includes allegations that fraudulent statements were made, identifies 3 of defendant's agents who allegedly made the statements, identifies a date range when the statements were allegedly made, the location where the statements were allegedly made, and why the allegedly false statements were false. So that's why the judge decided to not dismiss the case, was for those reasons right there. So basically they tried to get the case dismissed. The judge came back and said, no, I mean, it seems right here.
Yep, sure does.
Just interesting.
I mean, it's just kind of how Josh Team rolls.
Yeah, so it just seems like this is heading to settlement. Like they don't want this in court. Like, they really want to go lose this court case?
Well, and anybody who's ever read a document from Keller Williams, the franchise document knows that.
Yeah, if you've ever applied to be a franchise owner or are a franchise owner, any franchise, they have to disclose all lawsuits. Yeah. Current ones, past ones that have been settled, et cetera, right?
So there's a whole nice section there.
There's a history in that document that shows that they like to settle cases. Yep. So it'll be interesting to see what happens there.
Allows Gary to tell a story about never losing. Anyways, so moving on.
Zillow. So I mean, obviously, like I'm not a Zillow hater. Like, let's just put that out, right? Yeah. I'm not a Zillow hater, so don't take away my API Zillow. But I just think it's interesting that people make harsh statements about Zillow all the time. I kind of feel like they should be used to that right now. Yeah. I just thought it was interesting that they pulled Remind. Now, I don't know. I don't have a past history of knowing, has Zillow done this before? Have the companies that they allow to have their API? Like, obviously, Zillow doesn't have, from the start, let me say this, Zillow doesn't have to give their data away to anybody. They choose to allow their open APIs estimate feature to be given to lots of people, okay? So it's a choice. So they're well in their right of making this choice. I just thought it was interesting because Remind's reach is getting bigger and bigger and bigger around the country. Remind is a technology partner that's partnering with lots of MLSs and associations across the country, and then providing data to agents. So they're not trying to compete with agents. They're just trying to provide data to agents.
They're a tool for agents.
They're a technology tool for agents.
Yeah, it's interesting based on, so one of the comments, I don't know all the reasons why Zillow did this. However, the reason we were provided is that they took exception to some of our recent statements. I mean, is somebody at Zillow just feeling a little sensitive last week? Or
is it a new stand now that we have new leadership at Zillow going on? Like, is that perhaps like we won't tolerate poor statements?
Someone takes a shot at us, has an opinion that we don't agree with or don't like, we're just going to now say, get out of my sandbox.
Yeah. And for the record, I would be happy if anybody at Zillow would like to share information for their thoughts on why this had. Comment back. I'm happy to share it in next week's episode. So this is not us bashing Zillow, taking. I just thought it was an interesting thing. You look at it and you go, seems a little sensitive.
Not good, bad. Just seems a little sensitive. That's
seems
all.
Sensitive. So, and then lastly, I continue to talk about these type of things in industry headlines because as a real estate agent in this industry or as a mortgage professional, you have to start like counting the amount of money that is coming in, right? You don't even have to care about what all these companies do or intimately know everything they do, but you can't just like close your eyes and be like, you know.
This can't be overstated. So this new Total Expert raising $52 million in their round C series, as you mentioned. So Total Expert, for those of you that don't know, is a financial services company that specializes in technology marketing for both realtors and lending, right? And the point is, I think what you're driving home, which was my point too here, coming into this story, was it's just another example. This can't be overstated of how much money is being thrown into our industry to help these companies grow during right now these good times, right?
Correct.
Like
whether you think they're all going to succeed, whether you want to argue if they're all making money right now, whether you want to argue that they have the consumer's best interest in mind, blah, 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 whatever narrative as a real estate agent you want to play, you need to at least be aware that this money's coming in and it's well in excess of the money that your individual real estate company is spending on technology. I don't care who you are. I don't care what real estate brokerage you belong to.
Keller Williams is even spending that kind of money, and they're claiming to be a real estate or a technology.
Well, they're spending about $50 million a year for 10 years, and then they put out the soundbite around $500 million worth of technology investment, right? So here you've got a company that has now raised $86 million. Their third round was $52 million. And that's, I mean,
that's a lot of money.
You talked recently about Zillow. Zillow like just went and raised, what was it?
It was another like over $1 billion for their home buying process, right?
For Zillow offers, right? That was outside of like their actual valuation and what they're worth. That was just some side money.
Just some I think it was like 5-year notes. They raised, and they had to cut it off. They actually didn't mean to raise as much as they raised, but they had such a positive response from the people who were willing to give them money. They actually had to take more than they had initially anticipated. That again, that's another example of there's so much money being thrown into our industry. What can we learn from that? What can we derive from that at a minimum? How can we be aware of that and the impact it might have to our future as realtors?
Thanks for joining us for Industry Headlines. We'll see you back here next week. Take care.
Bye.